Let's go!
All right, so FF7 got a pretty big update, and as well as all the new compilation of FF7 stuff. I have not gone over this yet, but I've just seen a couple of things that are involved with what's going on here. So, full interview with Lord Nomura and his crazy Kingdom Hearts vision for the future of Final Fantasy VII Remake. According to his profile, this is about Sonon. This guy's from Wutai and he works with Avalanche. He's made to look Asian and wears clothes that resemble that of the army. So he is fitted with armor. He wanted to make a character that balances with Yuffie and to be a staff wielder. His clothes also allow him to move freely. In the beginning, we originally planned for him to be an extremely attractive, beautiful man. However, we ended up making him look more manly since Yuffie is different and what she's like with Cloud or Vincent, so we thought it would be interesting to see how she interacts with him. Okay. Gotcha. Well, it makes sense. They're from Wutai, which is like literally fictional Asia in Final Fantasy VII original, so I get it. Is that, I've never even heard that word before. Lithe, L-I-T-H-E, means to be thin? Weird. Hella weird. What the hell? I've never heard that word before. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong too.
He's lit.
He seems okay, right? I really don't feel any individual way about the character so far, at least from the trailer. I mean, we saw that Yuffie and Sonon can do co-op moves together. We want to explore a bit more of the battle concept. First off, can you explain what those small icons mean next to the ATB gauge? Since the player can only control Yuffie, you will still get a feel of where Sonon is nearby as well as his movements. There is a mode where Sonon can act on his own, or another mode where he fights when given specific orders by Yuffie. You can switch between these two modes with the L2 button. So that's what the icon means. They did not go crazy into where I was hoping this was going to go. Like the number one thing when we first saw the combat of FF7 Remake that I was hoping was that there was going to be team-up attacks using the ATB gauge. They obviously don't want to expand upon that, right? They're like, okay, so no, she essentially uses Sonon almost like he is a summon in some ways. Instead of you actually controlling Sonon, you don't. It seems that you are just in control of Yuffie throughout the entirety of the expansion. Okay. Hopefully, this is a sign of where things are going to go in part 2, where you're probably going to be able to do team-up attacks with the rest of the party. I don't know. Like Chrono Trigger, I said from the first day the gameplay was revealed for Final Fantasy VII Remake that the game should have dual and triple techs. It absolutely should. And that is where the game is eventually going to go. There is going to be dual techs of some kind. Will there be new materia and monsters? Yes! There will be new materia and monsters only available in Yuffie's DLC. Interesting. Only in her DLC. So it's almost like the DLC for her expansion, right, is like a separate episode that is only specifically just for that, you know? Not like the other missions where you're running around as Barrett or Tifa or anything like that. You know, or it's just... I kind of wish that Yuffie's materia and stuff like that would carry over into, you know, the other aspects of the game. But I guess she's not technically with your party, right? It's like a completely different scenario. Yeah, they're really trying not to tamper with FF7 Remake. Instead, this is like a side story expansion. I wish they carried over. That's disappointing, but you know what? I understand. Are there plans for DLC after this? For the sake of separating the PS5 upgrade with Yuffie's added parts, we had called this part DLC. However, we had already decided to create 7 Remake PS5, but we did not want it to mean that we are specifically creating DLC as well. Okay, my brain just oozed out my ear. Let's read that again. We had already decided to create the PS5 version, but we did not want it to mean that we're creating DLC as well. Okay. As a result, we really have no plans for any other DLC. Okay, well, there you go. That's all that, whatever the hell, either the translation or whatever the hell they're talking about, weird contrived thing. All it means is that there's not going to be anything after this. This is it. With 7 Intergrade, we are able to adjust the PS5 environment, which makes for an easy transition to develop for the next installment. Damn! Did we not call it? Damn. I hate it. I hate this horrible curse I have of seeing the future, but not the things I need to see in the future. The whole reason 7 Intergrade is going to be PS5 only is because they are specifically gearing up for the next version of FF7 Remake to be next gen only. So for anyone, once again, for anyone that was super curious that, man, do I need a I'm gonna keep my PS4, I don't need to upgrade to a PS5. No, this is like the cementing, sorry bitch, need to get a PS5 if you want to play the future of FF7 Remake. It's just the way it is. It is going to be a next gen game and they will not be made for PlayStation 4. This is essentially your warning right here, which, I mean, honestly, once again, absolutely sucks for the consumer. It sucks because so many people have access to PlayStation 4s. That legitimately does suck. However, it is also good considering the fact that they will not be hindered by previous generation hardware when they move forward into the next game. So if they have any crazy concepts regarding gameplay or world building or travel or expansive elements, they're not going to have to worry about previous generation hard drives, previous generation CPU bottlenecks, everything like that. They're going to have a lot more leeway when it comes to the next game being a dramatically different game than FF7 Remake Part 1. So it's good news, and also Monkey's Paw sort of like, ah, shit. The roadwork we laid out to complete the entire story takes priority, and if we are ever to add DLC, it will not be until after everything has been done. Well, that's good. That's a weird approach to DLC. Usually you announce DLC, you know, years in advance before the game's out. Okay, so this is about First Soldier. Hang on a second. It's surprising that FF7 series will be included in Battle Royale. Fans of 7 are, of course, intrigued, but this also appeals to other types of gamers. There are many similar games out there, such as PUBG, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Neues Ut. I never heard of these games. So who exactly is this work targeting? Well, the fans of Nomura's like, listen, bitch. We had this game done, all right? We had no idea how to market it, and I was just like, I'm gonna throw FF7 shit all over the place. People are gonna love it. Now, let's see what he actually says. While the fans of 7 have been stuck with the IP for a very long time, we wanted to tackle the challenge of appealing to people outside of the FF market. While I feel like the big name of FF7 will always overshadow this, we were pretty much entering this popular genre as a completely new challenge with FF7 First Soldier. Those who play Battle Royale genre games might not even know FF7 or have ever played a Final Fantasy game, and we hope that those who play this game are already interested in the world of FF7. Well, yeah, it's gonna be very hard to get people into this thing that aren't FF7 fans. We can't release a lukewarm title, so we're really putting our all into making this game. Since this new genre for us, it might also be a new experience for FF7 fans as well. I mean, maybe. We hope you can join us in this challenge. Well, he didn't admit it, right? He didn't admit it. My very tiny but huge brain prediction is the fact that they were already working on a Final Fantasy-esque Battle Royale game, right? Something that was PvEVP, where you fight monsters and you level up in a match, and then you also take those abilities that you learn and kill other dickheads or other teams, and then you level up from killing those teams, yada, yada, yada. Which seems like an interesting concept. Right? It seems like that could possibly be fun. However, I don't think even if Square was working on that kind of a game that they knew how to market it. They had no idea how the hell to enter the nut market in a situation like that. They have like no idea how the hell to do that. So long story short, they're like, oh, well, what's our biggest, most recognizable IP? It's Final Fantasy VII. We'll just make it a Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale. We'll make it a Final Fantasy VII game. That's my big prediction of what they did. In my personal opinion, I think it probably would have been better if they sort of approached it like Final Fantasy XIV, where it's more like a Final Fantasy All-Stars. I think that would have possibly had been a bit more approachable, especially considering the fact that it might expand beyond mobile. Yeah, well, like Dissidia, but not in like the really weird way Dissidia is portrayed. I think Dissidia is okay, but some of the, I think Dissidia is like fun. The problem with me is that Dissidia is kind of like the way they portray a lot of those elements coming together and like the story that encompasses them kind of sucks. Like it never has been great. It's that the best part about the games is just that you get all these characters together fighting and shit like that. Like that's the coolest part. It was obviously the best in Dissidia Duodecim, but it's always been just like, meh. It's just cool to see Cloud fighting fucking Squall, right? That's like the best part of it. Well, the reason I say Final Fantasy XIV is that Final Fantasy XIV has a really well realized world that encompasses all the Final Fantasies in it. And they do that in a very sound way. The way they're able to take all of those different elements and different things that make Final Fantasy, that shit is what makes Final Fantasy 14 so great. Is that you feel like you're in Final Fantasy All-Stars. And this is coming from somebody that hasn't even played much Final Fantasy 14 within perspective. I've played at least a bit, but that's always been great. That's like the best part about that. I think that would have been a way better way to approach Square doing a Final Fantasy BR style game. You know, I think that would have made a lot more sense. But either way, I'm down, right? If we're gonna be running around Midgar reactors and shit on chocobos and taking down Marlboros and doing all this shit, and also learning some lore about the world and stuff like that, fuck it, that's cool. I mean, I think this is probably the second best bet. I'm sorry, least disappointing way for them to approach this. The only other world I think would actually fit this in a way that would be crazy to look at in terms of 3D visuals and would obviously make a lot of fans happy is probably Final Fantasy VI. I don't think I would want a Final Fantasy X Battle Royale in that world. I don't know if it would work in many other Final Fantasies, but FF6 has a really cool aesthetic. Either way, 7's obviously popular, so I guess that makes sense. The 3 players that appear at the top left are your comrades. There are job icons that represent a fist, sword, and staff. But can you also change jobs during battles? Yo, what? As you might have guessed, each player can decide their own job, referred to as style in the game. That's what those icons mean. Each style has its own proper power and skills, and you can set this during each battle, but there's also an advantage to stick with only one style. We'll explain that at a different time. Holy shit, this Battle Royale game is gonna have skill trees per match. Do MOBAs do that? I've never played a MOBA. You guys will have to describe to me sort of what that's like. Where you're gonna either have to dedicate, you know, into getting further down the tree where the skills are more powerful, or separating at lower level skills and being more of like, you know, a master of none, but you know a lot. You know what's good about that? You know what I like about that? It's not just about, oh, I need armor and bullets, right? It's not just about, I just need these 2 absolute critical elements to move forward in the match and then try to win. This sort of leads me to feel like you can approach this in several different ways if you want. You can try to level up in this way, you can try to level up in that way. You can also use this weapon, you can also use that weapon, like. And it's also like the idea of maybe coming up with some class with some skills that possibly never thinks it'll work out, and it actually does work out. That actually makes me think of Hades in some ways. So that's a thing that's generally like that in MOBAs. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite elements that happened in Hades, is making a run actually work with some bunk-ass build. That's very fun, right? It's a very fun element, and I hope if that's going to be a big part of 7 First Soldier, okay. Interesting. You have plans for a beta test. We have plans to distribute a closed beta test with details announced later. Okay, we'll be all over that shit. However, it's important to find a good balance of what Battle Royale players want. All right? One of the game's core planners, Ichikawa, is a hardcore Battle Royale gamer and has seen a very keen to hearing feedback from everyone that makes adjustments accordingly. Okay, well, that's refreshing. Number 1, this line is refreshing because this is essentially the same thought process and design coordination that led to Square Enix not becoming bankrupt in, what, 2012 to 2013? Final Fantasy 14 almost bankrupted the entirety of the company. If it wasn't for, what was it, Eidos? Am I wrong in that? If it wasn't for Eidos, that company would have been absolutely floored. Square would have had to have sold. And then they eventually chose to put somebody that was actually a huge fan of MMOs in control of the expansion, if not fixing, of Final Fantasy XIV with Yoshi P. And Yoshi P was just like a super hardcore MMO guy from like all the way going back to Dark Age of Camelot and EverQuest and shit. Like it was his baby. So all he did was be like, well, I'm just gonna put everything that's really good in World of Warcraft and the best elements of Final Fantasy XI and go from there. The biggest problem with FF14, if you guys have watched the interviews of that game, is that they specifically did not want to do the things that were making MMOs popular at the time. They stayed away from them. This is good, meaning that if Nomura's a big influence on this project, where he's like, okay, Nomura's not going to design the next generation of Battle Royale, and we're going to call it Neo Angelo Battle Royale, Neo Angelo Royale engagements, like try to reinvent and redefine a genre and just make it less fun. Instead, we're just gonna put some dudes on the project that obviously love this shit, and we're gonna give them some decision-making capabilities. That's a good idea because that's what got you guys a lot of money and essentially saved the company with FF14. All that sounds like good news regarding First Soldier. I don't know if there's much I can be disappointed with there, but here's the disappointment. Here's where the monkey's paw begins to curl in on itself. So, Ever Crisis, the FF7 demake, remake, B-make. Talk about Ever Crisis. In our previous interview, I mentioned that the game will be released in chapters. Will the chapters be free and include the story? What exactly is the in-game transactions? What's going on? Each chapter is going to be free to play. In regards to the in-game transactions, it refers to Weapon Gacha. You'll be able to get special weapons or new costumes that do not exist in the original game, and this will add to the experience. So you'll be able to run around with fucking Cloud in his Advent Children costume. You'll be able to run around with Tifa in her Advent Children costume. Tifa Cowgirl costume, good idea. Very good idea. Maybe you could get Cloud's Kingdom Heart costume. And weapons, I don't know. Like, I'm only assuming they're going to be like, you get a sword that has fire imbue on it or some shit, right? Without having the materia? I don't even know. I don't think it's like you're going to roll the Ultima weapon at the start or some shit, right? I got my big dick sword or something. I don't think they're going to go that far, right? And here's the thing. We already knew something like this was going to happen. Like, we already picked up on this. We're like, wait a minute. You're remaking, like, all the FF7 games, but it's going to be free? So how are you going to make money? Like, 100%. It's going to be some gacha rolls and shit. If you absolutely want that shit, yes, you're going to be succumbed to the absolute trash lord fire that is gacha games. However, is that going to be required for you to enjoy the core part of the game? Do most gacha games like remove the core elements of the game? Does even games like Genshin Impact and shit remove that stuff? No. Like, I didn't do anything in the little bit of time that I played like Genshin Impact, and I was getting stuff. Most games nowadays, you do not absolutely are required to do this shit. Some very greedy ones do, right? It absolutely can, right? It 100% can do that shit. But do I think that they're going to go as greedy and as aggressive in some of those directions as some people think they're going to go? No, I don't think they will. I'll probably have a couple of rolls here and there, but long story short, I'll most likely end up spending less on these than I did when, if they just sold them at like, I don't know, 60 bucks a pop or something like that, or even 50 bucks a pop for all chapters. Because the chapters are going to be free. I am out of my element. I 100% am, because I don't gacha shit at all. So I have no idea what the hell this is really like. But what they're betting on is that you are such a Final Fantasy VII whale, and you have approached landmass. And that landmass is a remake in the way that you wanted the games to be, and you're gonna drop all your shit. You're gonna be a beached fucking whale, and the only hope you're gonna have to get back into the ocean is gonna be to roll that shit again. That's what they want. What they're really hoping is that there's enough Final Fantasy VII fans to be 100% whales. That'll drop so much money into guaranteeing the fact that they're going to get Tifa's cowgirl costume, or they're going to get Cloud's Kingdom Hearts outfit, or they're going to get some crazy fucking sword. They're going to get Cloud's going to have Squall's gunblade. You know, shit like that. Are you going to be hindered from playing the game if you don't have those things? No, you're not. You're really... I don't think you will be. That's my prediction. My prediction is that the game is still 100% going to be playable. You can go from beginning to end, have a ton of fun, play it again, yada yada, but you're not going to have to do this shit. However, a lot of people will be very inclined to keep rolling the goddamn slot machine. Would I prefer it to be just, let me just buy this shit? 100%. 100%, let me give you 15 bucks per chapter. Just take my money. Just take my fucking money. If you had the option, then that would be completely fine. What's the length of each chapter like? Can you give us an example of how long the original FF7 story will be? Original 7's about 10 chapters. To elaborate, it'll take 3 chapters to escape from Midgar. The other compilation titles will probably follow the same chapter pacing. Did they already say there's going to be a chapter per month? I think they did. I think they were specifically like, it's going to be 1 chapter per month when it starts up in 2022. So potentially by 2023, it might be done if it launches early 2022. It wouldn't make any sense if it didn't launch early 2022, in my opinion. Like, that's like a year away. Here's where that's weird for me, and I'll explain it. We talked about this the first time Ever Crisis was announced. Here's what's weird to me. You get 3 chapters in. Let's say it's like, I don't know, June 2022. It's like a full year and a few months away from right now. If it's June in 2022, that means that we're escaping Midgar and we're about to see assets. And this game clearly is already using assets from FF7 Remake. We've already seen that. Like, the in-game battles are just taking elements from FF7 Remake. So now it's like June, July 2022. We've left Midgar. We're going to come. We're about to get the flashback, and we're about to go fight a big snake in the middle of a swamp, right? To move into the Crystal Caves. What are they pulling those battle assets from? Is this technically sort of a sneak peek at what's going to be in FF7 Remake Part 2? Because clearly, up to Chapter 3, they're taking a lot of elements that are in FF7 Remake already. Anyway, moving on. Will Ever Crisis ever have any original episodes? We have some original episodes planned. First off is a story that will take place in 7 First Soldier, which is the other game that was announced at the same time. The story of First Soldier takes place 30 years prior to Soldier was in the middle of the being established. Younger versions of certain heroes as well as Shinra employees, they're talking about Sephiroth, and even other characters who will appear in the next installment of 7 Remake will be present. Interesting. I think what you guys are missing from this translation is the fact that they're directly inferring and deeply implying that the only character they're talking about throughout all of these is Gacht and Gacht alone. And he will be back. There is nothing you can do to stop it. Gacht is like Vigo from Ghostbusters 2. During the announcement trailer, we will see characters fighting the Scorpion Sentinel at the Mako reactor. Since Aerith is also in the fight, does that mean that it's a battle that takes place outside of the main story? This is a great question, because in one of the demos for FF7 originally, I believe you could fight the Guard Scorpion with Aerith. She was just like in the party. Like in a very, very early version of FF7, it was like Cloud, Barret, and Aerith. Aside from the story mode with the Journey of Cloud and the others, we have also prepared several special dungeons and battles that take place outside of the compilation. You can create your own dream party and have fun. Okay, so obviously they're like, it's not just going to be story mode and that's it. There's going to be other elements that, hey, now we can fight a harder version of the Guard Scorpion and we can be a team together. Cool. That makes sense. More gameplay stuff. Dope. That might be where a bit of the gacha stuff comes in. I definitely hope they don't incorporate dungeons into the gacha element. That'll piss me off. 100%. I will be fucking livid, mate, if they have secret bosses and shit that are specifically locked behind gacha elements. Right, just let us play the game. But cool dungeons and fun boss fights are the epitome of gameplay, right? They're the epitome of things that make the game good. If you start locking that shit behind cha-ching type stuff, no, I'd be really pissed. I hope that's not the case. This all seems like really good news. I think the only disappointing thing in Ever Crisis is that it is going to be a gacha, but I was kind of expecting that. Hearing that the combat and the gameplay is mostly going to be different between all the games does make a lot of sense, but the still very, very big lingering question is, how the hell is this going to be in relation to the actual FF7 Remake console games when we start to get into the chapters that start covering the parts where the console games haven't? Because that's still very bizarre to me. First Soldier sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. My biggest concern is it actually being on mobile, I guess, and what they're actually going to be capable with on mobile, but who knows. I think the biggest thing I'm worried about in this game is the combat actually going to be enjoyable? Is it going to be responsive? Things like that. Obviously with Intergrade, I'm a little disappointed that the materia and some of the items you get in Yuffie's DLC technically does not share with the party in the main game. I guess I wasn't expecting it before. It just made me realize that now, oh, it would have been nice to get a couple of extra materias in the PS5 version, you know? Some other things to make the game and mess around with it a little bit. Either way, most of it's actually pretty good news, right? Most of it's news that makes me more excited for their weird BR game, and actually makes me even more excited for Ever Crisis in some ways. But Ever Crisis is a long way out. Long way out.